Welcome to another episode of Red and Black, where your conservatism is not just the color that you're used to. I'm Lenny McAllister, blah, blah, blah. That tells you what kind of week I'm having, because we've been sitting here partying like it's 1896. What? That's not how the song goes, but that's how the election went last year. What the hell am I talking about? Let's bring in my wonderful friends that speak a lot more eloquently than I do. Just think, I'm the one that's the teetotaler, so you know I didn't have anything to drink. However, I can tell you that person over there has had something to drink, and she hasn't even been on the show for 30 seconds. She's already snickering at me, which tells you how she views me, but also how she views just her role in the world. Kira Davis, editor-at-large, Red State, and author of All Wonderful Things. Hello once again.
Hi, Lenny. It's just really good to know that, you're one of us. You're like the little people. You mess up every now and again. You get passionate about something and, the wrong words or no words at all come out of your mouth. I'm just glad that for once I got to see you make a mistake instead of it just being me that messes up on this show. So,
well, I still feel good because the stuff on my shelf behind me when I'm doing a live hit is PG or G rated. We'll get to that later. Hat tips to Ms. Davis. And emphasis on the word tip. I digress because that's bad. Somebody said that they're going to have a drinking game every time I say I digress. So, bottoms up. Speaking of bottoms up, down at the bottom, the dude from Texas who pulled out this fancy green screen for the last television show he did. But for us, we get the blinds. Jeff Charles.
Real.
I know he
Hey, well, if the software that you selected would let me have a green screen, then I'd have my green screen.
Okay, you guys, we're not going to do this
We got to get a little
here.
bit more bougie.
We're not going to do
here.
this here. Yeah. We're not going to do this on air.
Too late.
I'm just saying.
Hey, what do you mean we're not going to do this on air?
If you want me to be fancy, then you've got to have the right technology. Otherwise, you just get what you get. You know what I'm saying?
Once again, between the accent, the shirts, and everything else, I understand why you call yourself the Black Han Solo. Enough for you for right now. The dude that has more letters behind his name than a Russian spy, Dr. Christopher Metzler, which, by the way, you've been to Russia before. Maybe you have been a Russian spy.
Well, it's entirely possible. I did teach at the Russian Presidential Academy for 3 years. So
what?
Yes, that. Wow. I did.
I think we found the leak. I think we found the. I think we found the guy who rigged 2016.
There you go.
In front of us this whole time.
Well, and it's interesting that you would say that, Kira, in regards to rigging 16. So interesting that I'm getting rid of you on the screen right now because it's just way too interesting. So what I want to actually do is bring up something that goes back to, like I said, and you're the one that said it first, Jeff, and we were talking about going back to partying like it's 1896. And first of all, let's go to the tweet. We talked about the whole thing with time, and we're going to talk about that. And I'm going to go back to 1896 because I'm a little bit of a history wonk. Do you know who first started rigging elections as CEOs back in 1896?
I don't.
I will tell you. It was Rockefeller, it was Carnegie, and it was J.P. Morgan to make sure that a populist didn't win the general election for the presidency. And they ended up getting behind William McKinley in order to ensure that he became president and their business interests were protected. And then, to top it all off, they wanted to kill the career of a young Teddy Roosevelt and made him the vice president, thinking that he'll never become president this way. And then President McKinley took a trip to Buffalo, New York, and the rest, as they say, is history. But I digress. Much like 1896, there you go. 2. This story came out from Time Magazine talking about how all these CEOs and muckety-mucks got together to quote-unquote fortify the election. Now, I can tell you when Carnegie, Rockefeller, and J.P. Morgan fortified the 1896 election, they threw an awful lot of money into it to make sure that the fortification went their way. This sounds the same exact way. And again, if you had a problem with 2016 and the quote-unquote fixed election, this should drive you nuts too, right?
Right. But I have to actually give it to them. I mean, I read the article, and just the way it was written was so propagandistic, so self-serving. They made these people sound like heroes. And what I love is that, from a persuasion perspective, they couched all of this under the guise of all of these entities, all these CEOs, the Chamber of Commerce, the media, legislators changing laws. This was all done to ensure the security of the election, to make sure that the election was free and fair. What you can do is, anytime in that article you see something about preserving the election integrity or something to that effect, replace that with make sure Biden wins. Then you have what they're really trying to say, but they thinly disguise it under this veneer of caring about the election and pretending like Donald Trump was going to destroy democracy in America. No, these people knew what they were doing. They wanted Biden to win. They wanted Trump to lose. And they're too feckless to be honest about it. Now, I'm not saying that everybody this applies to every single person who was involved in it. They had some Trump supporters in there too. I'm sure that there were people on the left and the right who actually just wanted to make sure that the election went the right way. But the vast majority of these people had an agenda, and they carried it out. And Time Magazine, they may think they've hidden that, but they didn't. I mean, anybody can read the article and see what's going on here. The only people who believe that this was about election integrity are the people who want to believe that in the first place. So, yeah, great article. It didn't say anything that we didn't already know, but
it was stunning. I think, but when I woke up, well, I went to bed last night on this article. One of our editors at Red State posted it in the chat room, and I thought to myself, I should write something on this, but I was just too tired. But I wasn't too tired to read the article, and it kept me up for quite a while. I could not believe the audacity. It was just stunning for them to write something like that when mere days ago at Red State, our pages have been banned, suspended. Our writers have had some of their content on social media suspended and their accounts suspended for suggesting the same thing. They are admitting what we have been saying on the right since the beginning. Of course, there are bigger conspiracy theorists, right? There are people out there who are like Q people who are like, this is a huge global shadow conspiracy. But a lot of us were like Jeff and I were just people who are saying, no, it's not necessarily that deep, but there is collusion. There's a collusion between these industries. I said right here on this very show that I believed, I said this back in November, I think, that I believed that in the coming months and years, we would see actual proof and communications between big tech and the Democrat Party and the media, coordinating their messages and coordinating the stories they're going to cover. I still believe that evidence is out there, and Times article today says it all. Times article today confirms for me that evidence is out there. I do believe, listen, I said this too. Trump is not crazy. He's not crazy. It's DC that's crazy. Inside the Beltway is crazy. And now we know big tech and mainstream media is crazy. And he was just reacting to it. You know what, you guys? Trump was right. Trump was right. I think a lot of people out there are going to be really hurt to learn that Trump was right.
Dr. M, let me ask this question, though. What happened in 2020? How different was it in 2020? Because I just mentioned 1896. We know that Citizens United was 2010. Mm-hmm. We're not going to act like big corporations and big money people weren't dumping money into politics in the 80s and the 90s. Heck, big money people got behind Ronald Reagan and made him a governor out of no place in the 60s. We can go back and back and back, and we have both political parties getting behind Eisenhower and money being thrown at him. This isn't the first time that CEOs did this and tried to cobble together and win an election or throw people off course. What made last year different that made Time Magazine write about this and has made so many Americans throw their hands up in disgust?
Well, first of all, I think you said it incorrectly at the beginning. What you said was this was an attempt to fortify.
That's what they call it. That's what
that was there.
Yeah,
no,
but I think
there were.
Yeah, but I think it's more like fornication, actually.
Is there something on my shelf. Oh, wait a minute. That's another segment later on in the show.
This is all.
This was a political orgy.
This is going to come
That's what's going on.
full circle at the end of the
You'll
show.
understand eventually.
Yeah, but that is exactly my point. Look, the difference
Yes.
here is that essentially they try to disguise it with the help of the mainstream media.
Yeah.
The fact is, Democrats have control of the House, the Senate, the presidency, and the fourth estate. And as a result of that, this is where we find ourselves. So, which is why I think it was more an attempt at fornication than trying to fortify.
Yeah,
And those CEOs, it's one thing for people with money to back an election. That's normal. That's
normal.
what you're talking about, Lenny. But what the Time article is talking about, and what we've been talking about, is that it wasn't just a matter of people throwing their money behind the candidate that they want. And okay, this candidate is supported by a lot of big players in the industry, and so it gives them an unfair advantage. It wasn't that. It was that these people it wasn't about the money. It was about the avenues that they controlled, that they colluded to. It wasn't just that they were throwing their support behind Biden. They were actively squashing information about what Trump was doing, about the things that were happening to Trump. They actively squashed that Hunter Biden story, which was a real story that later they reported on after the election. So it isn't just about corporate interests, which of course have been playing shenanigans within all elections throughout all eternity. This is an issue of a massive conspiracy between the biggest industries in our country, political, tech, and media, to deliberately hoodwink the American people, to deliberately deceive them or withhold information from them, withhold the truth from them in the interest of fortifying elections, I guess.
But my question goes to this, and I'll throw it to Jeff, and I'll throw it back to you and you, Kara, and Chris as well. When you were saying this, and I agree that there's something to be said about also pulling the mechanisms, not just putting money in. But 1992, Bill Clinton, he had everything from playing the saxophone on Arsenio Hall show to literally having the media push him up and literally prop him up as the first black president of the United States, while putting stuff out there about George H.W. Bush, who had just led America through a war and had just had a 90% approval rating literally 12 months earlier. But the way the media treated him and all the mechanisms came out to get behind Clinton, same thing. Whitewater wasn't a story. Paula Jones wasn't a story. And you saw that in the re-election campaign as well. So was it the same thing as maybe we saw in the 90s, maybe what we saw in the 70s, going against the Republican Party with Jimmy Carter in 76? But the difference is you have new toys, you have Twitter, you have social media, you have different things that can make something bad go from bad to worse, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, these forces have always existed, right? I mean, the media has always been biased, but in 2020, it's dialed up to 11. Even if you look at how the activist media is right now, it's still different from what it was back in the 90s and the early 2000s. Back then, they had a left-wing bias, but in 2020, they are full-on activists. So you have that, you have all the money, you've got the Chamber of Commerce who joined in with it, who was supposedly right-leaning, but we know why they want to Trump out: immigration. Even the notion that you would have supposed civil rights leaders, leftists, Mark Zuckerberg, CEO of Facebook, invited them over his house for dinner to discuss how to tamp down on disinformation. Now, we know what that word means. That means anything that is conservative that doesn't go along with what we say. If they were serious about this, they would be cracking down on left-wing disinformation as well. They didn't. They cracked down on the Hunter Biden story, which was not disinformation. So, I mean, like I said before, this Time article, none of this is a surprise. We saw this happening before our eyes. The Time magazine article just adds context. It gives us more detail, and it just confirms what we already knew. My thing is, why aren't we doing this stuff?
Kira, is this going to end up being just a Trump thing, or is this going to end up being this is how it's going to be for conservatives? Because it's a different story if this is going to live past 2020. This becomes 2021, 2025, and the like.
This is what we were saying during the lead up to the election, when there were a lot of the hashtag true conservative crowd, the trademarked crowd saying, look, Trump's bad for the country. We got to get him out. For somehow, through some justification, Joe Biden was going to be a lot better. And this is what we begged them to consider, that this doesn't stop at Trump. None of this stops at Trump, and it hasn't stopped at Trump, right? We've talked about this on this show. The day after the elections, I said, look, I don't understand why liberals are so mad. They won everything. They just cheated their way to an election to win the White House. They won the Senate. They own the media. They own big tech. They got half of conservative, the far right, banned off the internet forever. They killed their competition. I don't understand why they're so angry. It's because it will never stop. Their idea of unity is to get rid of half the country. So no, it's not going to stop at Trump. We've seen them. They've been making moves since January 1st, to be honest. They have been making moves to deplatform. Now they're making calls to take Fox News off the air, Newsmax off the air, OAN off the air. They label them as right-wing misinformation. That's the word of the day, isn't it? Misinformation machines, and therefore they're a danger to society and have to go. These people are not going to stop. And we're going to talk a little bit later about why we shouldn't play their game.
So let me ask this question then, Chris, because Kara talked about deplatforming. One person that is both getting deplatformed in one regard, but then at the same exact time is getting their platform elevated, and the Time story seems to validate her platform, is Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. And just this past week, she was taken off of committees. And prior to that, they had a vote on her. They had a vote on Liz Cheney. And the GOP kind of gave a little bit of grace to both of them in essence. But with this story coming out, all of a sudden, some of the stuff that she's saying, for all the rhetoric about her being just off her rocker, this stuff comes out and it's like, okay, look, maybe she's more of the zealot than the person that we need to start ignoring. Now the GOP now has to reassess that, it seems, again, right?
Yeah, well, they do have to reassess it. And look, there are a couple of things here. As it relates to Greene, whatever, she says what she says, but here's the problem. Here's the critical mistake. The Democrats decided to get involved in internal Republican leadership. Are you kidding me? And at this point, if that's the standard, then there are a number of Democrats who should also lose their committee seats. That's number one. Number two, what you saw here in this election, to the question of how is this different, here's what you're seeing. If this were in a court of law, it would be what we call a RICO case, which is racketeer, influence, corrupt organizations. This is exactly what you're seeing. And I just don't think people are seeing that. The plan is they want to determine what the outcome's going to be. They want to determine who the players are going to be. And it's not going to stop with Trump. They have essentially said, we have won. This is the model going forward. And look at all of this kind of stuff. They're pushing stories about, oh, well, Trump's going to start a third party. Nonsense. Here's the problem. He's smart enough to understand. He starts a third party. Democrats will continue to win seats. Okay? And that's the difficulty. His issue is, how do we move the party along 2020, starting with 2022, but pushing all of this information? Let's understand, this is not by happenstance, and it is different because they have determined what the outcome would be. Even with Clinton and all of those kinds of things, yeah, they were left leaning. However, they didn't have the outcome in mind. And you're putting together rhino organizations, rhinos, Democrats, all of these people, and they're all going along with it. Trump is bad. And what does it get us? If you look at the news media coverage, all it gets us, the daily press briefings. Circle back, girl. That's what you got.
Because I ain't no circle back, girl. I ain't no circle back, girl.
It's
Who
you know
needs to remake that song?
Yeah.
what's crazy, Jeff, is the fact that you look at all of what's going on, and now we're into a month of Biden, and we're still talking about Trump just as much. Biden talked about unity. That seems to be kind of out the window, because even when he met with the Republicans and said, hey, let's talk about your idea of COVID plan. Hey, look at the time. I can't see how time flies. I'm going to go still do what I want. This kind of sounds, again, the same exact way we have heard in Capitol Hill before. And when you see these articles coming out, you see the back and forth that you see there. To Kira's point, everybody said it's going to be so much better under Biden. I don't feel like we're more united all of a sudden.
Well, no, that was never their intention. I mean, they're not going to unite us. They don't care about that. They say that to convince their base that that's what they're trying to do. Really, they just want us to submit to whatever they want to do. Now, from what I'm saying, I don't think that's going to happen. I think even with the establishment largely in charge, I think there are enough people who are non-establishment who are going to push back. Dr. Metzler brought up the whole House vote against Marjorie Taylor Greene. I'm not a fan of hers, but the Democrats didn't have a right to do that. That should have been handled by Republicans and by voters. Yeah. But now, just like what happened in 2013 when they ended the filibuster, they're going to live to regret this, because after 2022 and 2023, I hope Ilhan Omar is ready to go, because they are going to strip her of her assignments. Yep. And at this point, I can't blame them. Do I like it? No, but the Democrats set the precedent, and they're going to be whining about it. I just wrote an article about this morning, and in 3 years, I'm going to be writing another one that says, I told you, dumbasses, what was going to happen.
Yeah. So I got receipts. I got screenshots.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so I got a folder.
This stuff is only going to get worse. Biden does not want unity. And the thing is, even if Biden did want unity, the people on his side don't. They don't. They want to determine everything. That's why they had this whole cabal. They think that they should be in charge of determining who runs our country. And this is something that we've seen in movies as fiction, and we hear people talk about it, and it sounds like conspiracy theories. No, this is real now. This is real, and conservatives better be ready to figure out a way to push back.
Kara, are we losing? Let me ask you this question and tie it into what you were about to say, because he brought up something about how people are going to be stripped off committees and everything else. Are we losing democracy? People thought we were going to lose democracy because of Donald Trump, but it seems like we're losing democracy because of the love of vengeance. And everybody wants to get their vengeance on somebody else. And as a result, we're losing what used to be norms of democratic government in America, even with it being as flawed as it used to be.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I was going to say, Lenny. There's a GIF that I like to use. It is of one of my favorite shows, The Office, and it's an episode where Michael and Dwight and a couple other people play a murder mystery game, and then they all decide they all want to be secret agents, and they end up at the end of the day refusing to leave because they're all in like a finger gun circle, like Michael's got his fingers pointed at Dwight has his at Andy, and Andy at Mike, and it's this big circle, and they just, in the episode, they just stand there all night forever doing that. And that's where we are in American politics right now. We're in this big like finger gun circle where we're just pointing our guns at each other. I think this is the result, Lenny, of the fact that
finger gun pointing, by the way, Kira. It's not a finger gun, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
This is the result of no adults being left in the room. And I do believe that I believe that the way the media always presented Trump, and I've always defended his behavior on the show, not necessarily as like the pinnacle of stuff, but I'm like, he's not a diplomat. He's just a regular guy. So he sees BS and he's like, this is BS. Whatever. This is BS. It sounds crazy coming out of the mouth of a politician to us, but he's not crazy. Trump was actually the adult in the room most of the time. The guy who was like, look, I know y'all want to do this, but it don't make no sense. You guys, it doesn't make sense. You guys are being petty. You guys are being childish. You guys are stamping your feet because I won, and nanny boo boo, I won. That there was, We have lost the people in positions of influence who are willing to put their foot down and say enough is enough. I would say a good example of an adult in the room is Rand Paul. Somebody who can stand up and say, Tim Scott, somebody who can stand up and say, this is ridiculous. What are these stupid games we're playing? This is not how we act. This is not what the people pay us for. This is not what the time in America's highest institution is meant for. Now we are stuck in this never-ending game of chicken. And by the way, if Biden goes through with court packing, we're screwed. It's never going to end. We're going to end up with 4,000 judges on the Supreme Court. You know, someone's got to step up. And I believe those people are dying off, to be honest, because they're getting old and the squad's going to take over. But the people who understand how things actually are supposed to work in DC, and that's mostly on the left, Pelosi and her people, they need to step up. It's time for them to start, you know, using that pimp hand. Start telling people we don't act like this because this goes in a circle. It comes back around and it will bite us in the butt. I'm happy to watch the Democrats overplay their hand, but at the same time, I am saddened by what this might mean for the future of American politics.
So, Chris, I'm gonna say something controversial, but you may or may not agree. Number one, are people just afraid of the power of the primary process because they feel like somebody could always run further to the left or further to the right, so they're scared to try to moderate? And number two, to me, and maybe this is me jumping in a different direction completely, but this seems to scream term limits because look, if you know you're only going to be there for 12 years at 6 terms as a congressperson, or you're only going to be there for 12 years, 2 terms as a senator, get to work and stop worrying about what's being said on social media, or if somebody's mad at you and you got to tweet back at them and clap back, or whatever the new phrase is with the kids these days.
Yeah, well, yeah, I think that term limits are extremely important. I've always advocated for term limits, largely because I think the president has a term limit. So why can't members of Congress have a term limit? So I've always been a big fan. And for those people who tell me, well, you know, as a constitutional lawyer, you should know it's not in the Constitution. Neither was the president having 2 consecutive terms. So come on, don't give me that. You know, there's that issue. And then to the issue of unity and all of this other stuff. And it's fascinating to me. Well, actually not fascinating. It's just a big laugh. Because at the whole center of Biden's plan, everything is about energy efficiency, global warming, all of that kind of stuff. But today he's going to Delaware from DC, and he's going on Air Force One. What? What are you doing?
He doesn't need to lead by example, Chris. That's for you little people.
Yeah, apparently.
Isn't that what Kerry did? He went to Italy, and then they were like, "Oh, why'd you fly a private jet over to Italy?" Well, I have very important work. Their work is always way more important.
Right. Well, and he also said, well, for people like me, okay, all right, peasants.
Yeah.
So that's the entire thing. It's this hypocrisy. And I think, though, from the Republican standpoint and from the conservative standpoint, we have to start playing hardball. Look, as you said, Kara, you know, Nancy and her people, they know how it works. Next in line, you've got Hakeem Jeffries, who's been there forever. He knows how all of this kind of stuff works, but we've got to start playing hardball. Let's start doing it now. I hear people tell me, oh, well, you know, 2022. Yeah, 2022 started 2 years ago. I mean, what are you waiting for?
And I want to say, too, that, you know, look, MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, is, look, she's got her own initials now. Look, we didn't know who this woman was.
She's our AOC. That's who she is.
Right.
I didn't even know she won her race. I didn't even know who she was when people started complaining about her. I went and read her stuff, and I'm like, oh, yeah, she definitely seems cuckoo. But you know what? Once you start playing that game, there's no end to it. You think that they're going to stop? Like you asked the question earlier, Lenny, is this stop at Trump? No. Do you think it stops at Marjorie Taylor Greene? No. Next thing you know, Rand Paul's on the chopping block. Ted
Mhm.
Cruz already on the chopping block. AOC accused him of trying to have her murdered.
And-
You know, it's not, if we play that game, it never stops. What the right response to the MTG thing is this. Her constituents elected her. If
Period.
they don't like the job she's doing here or the things she's saying, they can vote her ass right back out. This is not a position that belongs to the Democrat Party. It is not a position that belongs to the GOP. None of those people have any place censuring her from anything. Now, I understand that committee assignments are a different thing. People don't elect committee assignments. That's an assignment. But again, once we start playing this game, look, I'm no defender of the things that she says or whatever. But guess what? She's going to be a huge fundraiser for the party moving forward. She's going to have a lot of that like far right Trump wing that are maybe really disappointed with how the Republicans have handled the aftermath of the election. If you let this succeed, you let this campaign against MTG succeed, then all bets are off. Everybody's on the table. Why will we play their game? There's no winning it. The left has their crazies too. There's a bunch of crazy people in Congress. And guess what? The people sent them there. And when the people don't want them there, they'll send them home.
First
Well,
of all,
and just one
here,
thing on
go ahead,
AOC,
Chris.
AOC accusing Ted Cruz of trying to have her murdered. It just reminds me of the time that I was in the limo when JFK was shot. She wasn't even in that building.
We won't do any fact checking, Doc. We're not going to fact check that statement at all. It doesn't need to be. It came out of your mouth. It's true.
It's true.
You know, one thing I'll say though is
Please
that
tell me you weren't with Ted Cruz's dad that day, by the way. But again, I digress.
Yeah. Well, you know, one thing that I'll say too, I mean, when it comes to unity, when it comes to dealing with the nut jobs on both sides, you know who actually wants unity? It's regular people. It's regular ass people on the left and on the right. They're tired of this stuff. And you know what? If I'm talking about the Democrats, there are people in office who represent those people. You just never hear about them. They're moderates.
Right.
So,
right.
And you know, we talk about like the whole $15 minimum wage thing. That didn't work. I think that a lot of the far left's agenda is not going to work because of the moderates that you never hear about, the Joe Manchins, the Kirsten Sinema, people like her. They're going to stop this agenda that they've got going on, and they are willing to work with their Republican colleagues without accusing them of attempted murder. This stuff will end when the people who are more moderate, when the people who actually want unity and want our government to work, when people who are tired of these fringe people stand up and say enough. But and I know I say this a lot, but it's not going to change until people on both sides do that.
Here's the problem. The problem is the same people that say they want people to act nice in Congress and in the Senate are the same people pushing them to fight each other on Facebook and on Twitter. They love the entertainment of these people fighting in social media, and then they wonder why they don't like each other when they have to work on legislation. So the American people have to pick something. They either want to be entertained or they don't. And look, people said, well, they picked an entertainer in 2016. You know what? They picked an inexperienced lawmaker that was a statewide lawmaker that was entertaining on television and inspiring with his image of what he was in 2008. They picked an entertaining young governor that had a shady background because he seemed to be really cool in 1992. They picked a governor that had an entertainment background to be a two-term president in 1980. So the American people have been playing this game for a while, and it hasn't burned them as badly as it is doing now on Capitol Hill, because now you got 435 entertainers in the House of Representatives trying to get their next, media hit.
Well, this is how we've chosen to be. Okay, Americans like to be entertained. I mean, I get it that it's super annoying, but that's how we do it. Nixon lost because he started sweating. That's how we do it. I do concur with what you're saying, and I get what you're saying, Lenny. But I'm loath to be too harsh on the American electorate. Look, the issue isn't the Congress's job, politicians' job are to respond to the mood and temperature of the American people. We influence politics, not the other way around. Donald Trump was never the disease. He was only ever the symptom. Everything we're seeing now, they're only symptoms. So my thing is, we're not going to change it. So the GOP might as well get on board and start nominating some entertaining people, because that's what's going to get traction in the media.
Hold on, I thought
Not your boring milquetoast Mitt Romneys.
I thought their job was to legislate, not to entertain.
You
Now
gotta get there first.
They can be affable while they're legislating, but once we're not talking about candidates.
Sure.
We're talking about people in office. Once they're there, their job is not to entertain. Most of the people there now, their job's to do one or two things. Three things: run for governor, run for president, or entertain you. And that's much of the problem. But
you don't get a lot of your agenda done. I'm mixing up a lot of where my talking appearances have been this week, but on some show, maybe it was my own, or maybe this one that I said earlier that
all the things that she's been on.
I just talk all day long. But
you never just listen to yourself, by the way?
I do. Sorry. Too much. But one thing is that you have to have the electorate behind you to get your agenda done. It's called a mandate. And part of getting a mandate in the era of social media is getting people ginned up, is getting people excited or passionate or angry. You get people behind you to make a forceful push, to help you make a push in your job as a lawmaker by doing all these things. Now, Jeff pointed out there are moderates that don't have to do that. Not everybody has to do that. And again, Lenny, I share your distaste, but I think I find it, I don't know what I'm trying to say. Maybe I find it just a little bit naive, I guess, that this is going to change or that it even needs to change. This is the way it is. So I believe in dealing with the world the way that it is and not the way that we wish it could be. And so I think the best thing the GOP could do for themselves is to at least let the entertainers do their jobs and distract while they do, the adult stuff behind the scenes.
I will say this.
One thing, can I remind everybody that Congress runs around here with an approval rating usually under 25%. And we generally don't get much stuff done. And everybody hates Congress except for their congressperson because apparently they're entertaining. So I get what you're saying, Kira, but then people will complain about what Congress is not getting done.
That's part of the fun.
Well, but here's my thing.
Always complain about government.
Here's the thing. If they want to entertain, they can entertain all they want as long as they actually push for change or actually get shit done. But like you said, Lenny, they don't, and that's why they have such a crappy approval rating.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but at the end of the day, it all comes back on us because we allow this to happen. We put those people in there and we reward them for acting in the way that they do.
Dr. Am, let me pivot for just a second, because here we are talking about people getting stripped from committees and this is that and the other and kumbayas and people fighting and everything else. And guess what people are not talking about today? The unemployment numbers.
Yeah.
They're still horrible. We added 49,000 jobs. If we added 49,000 jobs in Pennsylvania, we'd be like, oh, okay, that's not bad, not great. That's not bad. If we added 49,000 jobs in Pittsburgh, we'd be happy. We added 49,000 jobs nationally in January. The numbers were revised down in December. They were revised down in November. And people are dropping back out of the workforce. We're still talking about Donald Trump and impeachment lawyers. And look at the chart. We're still 9.5 million jobs or so, actually 9.9 it says, underwater since this time last year. And it doesn't seem like anybody, whether it's the president or the entertainers in Congress, seem to really want to talk about this.
No, because the numbers are Trump's fault. And that is exactly what they're going to say. Biden's going to say, look at this mess that Trump left me, and I'm doing my best to help you all. Even though I shut down the pipeline and I've got my people saying, well, find another job for you. And what was that the the vice president said the other day.
You repurpose landmines.
You can repurpose landmines. Okay, hi. They're not meant to be repurposed.
Well, they're not landmines, first of all. Landmines will explode you.
There we go. So we start there.
Mines, right, aren't meant to be repurposed. What would we repurpose them for?
Yeah, and that's what I was thinking. I'm like, okay, well, first of all, it's a landmine would probably blow up in your face. You'll be dead. There would be,
Maybe that's what she meant.
It may be.
Literally meant maybe these people need to go blow themselves up.
So, so essentially Biden's going to say, I'm trying to help you. Look, I'm trying to give you stimulus money. I'm trying to do all of these things while I bring the economy back. First of all, your $1.9 trillion stimulus bill is garbage. Okay, how much money have we already spent? We don't even know where that money went. We have no accountability, but just add another $1.9 trillion. And by the way, borrow it from China. You have that.
It's just paper. It's just
paper.
What is money? It's an idea.
Yeah.
It's like Antifa. It's an idea.
It's interesting though, because there was some pushback from a former Clinton economist saying, listen, Biden, don't go too big with this stimulus package. Because if you do that, coupled with the unemployment, you're going to drive inflation the wrong way. You're going to drive the national debt, obviously, the wrong way. And instead of just dealing with the crisis, you're going to create a multi-year crisis. Again, I've said this on this show previously. Barack Obama said we need shovel-ready jobs. And then a year into his presidency, he said, well, I guess the jobs weren't as shovel-ready as I thought they were. It took 4 years, actually 6 years. It took until the Republicans took over the U.S. Senate for jobs to really start coming back into the American economy. Jeff, we joke about, okay, all these things are going to reopen all of a sudden. We make the joke that, we've heard the joke on air that COVID's going to disappear to some Democrats because Biden's now in the White House. But the truth is, they got to own these unemployment numbers, and people will complain about Trump and get really angry at some Democrats soon. Again, we saw black folks in the underclass yell at everybody last year. They were mad at Trump. They were mad at Democrats. They were mad at everybody last year. They don't want a repeat of that going into the summer of 2021.
Well, yeah, I mean, the thing is that the difference is that they're not going to be able to keep blaming Trump for that much longer. I mean, they'll still try. They're still going to do it. I mean, I read a piece about how they ran on Orange Man bad and they're going to try to govern that way. It's not going to work. And to me, it's going to be yet another reason why they lose out in 2022. But the bottom line is it's getting to the point to where, and I think some of them realize this, they have to start opening this stuff back up. I mean, the unemployment numbers are abysmal, and that cannot stand. We can't sustain this for much longer. I mean, you can only do so many stimulus deals. We got to get back to work. We got to take precautions, but still get back to work. Now, I think they did cynically wait until Biden got into office to start doing this. But I think a lot of it is that they recognize that at a certain point, they're going to be getting all the blame instead of just getting part of it. And they're not going to be able to say, oh, Orange Man bad. No, you guys are bad. So you guys are going to be held responsible.
And they created a media. They created an alternative media like Where We All Work that has spent the last 4 years taking receipts. Right? Yep. Screenshotting every demand they ever made. Oh, this is Trump is floating on Obama's economy. Everything that good happened to Trump was because Obama was such an amazing person. And so we took those receipts, and as they want to pull out these little hypocritical moments, we've got the receipts for them. The other thing is, any plan that the Democrats have for bringing jobs back is going to fail. Obama's shovel-ready jobs thing was a failure because government doesn't create jobs. They don't make jobs. The reason why when Republicans get into office that we see, quote, more jobs being made is just that there are certain policies or even just the market shifts because of the positivity or whatever. You think it's going to be more business friendly. The market will shift, and then that opens opens the market. Jobs are made from people. Jobs are made from small businesses. Jobs are made from innovators, people who see a problem that needs a solution and provide the solution. We all know government provides a zero solution and only creates problems, which, can be good for private industry because then we work to fix those problems and create more jobs. But Biden is not going to create more jobs. The unemployment numbers are not going to get much better. We'll see some states do better than others. Florida, Texas, California is still closed. Half our population already by now isn't working. So we're in a moment in time now that the dust has started to settle, where the Democrats, as Jeff and Chris both alluded to, are not going to be able to run on Trump. They're not going to be able to blame everything on Trump, and they're going to be held responsible for the temperature and the turn that this country is taking. And we're seeing firsthand now the results of their policies. And I don't think America's going to like them. Today, the Democrats dropped the PRO Act back into the House.
Mhm.
The PRO Act is the national version of AB 5, which I've been screaming about for a year and a half now. And I told everybody out there who was like, oh, Biden, at least Trump, we won't have to listen to his mean tweets anymore. He's so mean. And I said, y'all, if Biden gets in, this is sitting in the Senate right now. If Democrats win the Senate, this comes back around and we get the PRO Act. And you know what the PRO Act does? It outlaws your side gig. It outlaws freelancing. 300 job categories canceled overnight here in California. And I'm not just talking about writers or actors, which those are among the people. I'm talking about if you contract as a nurse, your job is done. If you contract as a security guard, your job is done. Are you an Uber driver? Are you a Lyft driver? Do you do DoorDash? Do you do consulting work, Chris? Jeff, whatever the work you do when you go to work for other outlets or write guest op-eds, done. All that is done. It's sitting in the Senate right now. So these aren't games that we're playing. People are going to come face to face with the reality of what the Biden administration has promised soon enough. And unfortunately, I do think it means we're going to have to go through some pretty rough times. But again, I always believe that the American voice will have its, day in court.
She's speaking patriotically again. It actually goes to what I was going to say. Number one, you mentioned that the market gets shifted by policies. I thought it was through Reddit users, but we learned that last week. The other thing was that politicians pay attention to receipts. Guess what else politicians pay attention to? Recall signatures out in California, which mentions two things. Number one, your governor out there, Kira, is getting mighty nervous with the numbers that are being accumulated. And number two, I'm not going to say anything, but I'm noticing a different shift in tone and the patriotic voice of the American people rising to the top, coming out in your oratory here all over again. Is there anything you want to announce? It's interesting. I see that you've been looking online looking for some flag pins, and I just thought that was kind of odd too.
No announcements to make. Not yet. But I will announce that the recall is going well. However, we have hit a bit of a hiccup, I think, this week. And that is that a lot of signatures are having to get thrown out because, as you can imagine, the state of California makes the signature gathering process as convoluted as possible. Yep. So there are a lot of people who don't know that there are actually two places to sign on the petition before you leave. And you have to sign it in person. We can't vote in person, but you have to sign your recall petition in person. So I was talking to a friend earlier who was actually volunteering to verify signatures, and she said I had to throw out so many because there weren't two. So I think it's important if you're listening to the show, if you're from California, if you have family or friends in California, please let them know. If you've signed once, go back and re-sign the petition and re-sign it in both places and get the word out. Find out where your local petition is. We've got 1.4 million signatures now. I would imagine close to a couple 100,000 are going to get thrown away. So they really want to make up that spread. We have, I think, 3.5 weeks to do this. The governor, my sources say, is very nervous right now. Very nervous. And the fact that this is a national story right now tells me that this is a big deal for Dems. And this falls right into, you're right on it, Lenny. It falls right into the idea of Democrats overplaying their hand. Newsom way overplayed his hand in this state. And he has probably done a lot of damage to the Democrat Party, whether or not he survives this recall.
So I got two questions.
Go to recallgavin2020.com for more information on where your local petition is. Thank you.
Two questions real quick, and then we got to get out of here. Number one, if there's going to be a recall vote, who's the strangest celebrity that's going to run for governor of California? I'm going to start with Chris on that.
No clue.
Oh, come on, Chris, you can do better than that.
You're the smartest person on the show. You have a clue. I'm coming back to you. Jeff, you're a native Californian. Who's the strangest celebrity that runs for governor if this recall thing comes to pass?
Kim Kardashian.
Yeah.
That's not even that strange. Kira.
Kris Kardashian. Kris Jenner.
I was going to say her first.
Jenner. Chris, I'm just cutting you off for the rest of the show. But go ahead. Who do you want to say?
Lady Gaga.
Who'd you say?
He said Lady Gaga. She lives in New York, I think. So she is not. No, but I mean, we've had Arnold Schwarzenegger before, and I don't know that the people are real excited for another celebrity governor.
I didn't say they were excited for him. I said
outworn their welcome. But
the late Gary Coleman ran for governor.
That was beautiful.
I'm just
God rest his soul.
Yeah, God rest his soul. But he ran for governor. That's all I was.
I actually got to vote to recall Gray Davis too. I was proud of that. So it can happen. Gray Davis got recalled, and the funny thing was right before I moved to Virginia, so it wasn't even going to affect me. But I just wanted to sign it anyway because I couldn't stand him.
Back when Gary Coleman was running, I think it cost $250 to put your name in for governor. It's not that way anymore. So we won't see as many increases. It's like, I think it's something like $1,500 or something like that.
Oh, that's not, look, and I'll say this, and I'm going to say the thing that we've been alluding to and tipping people off for before we get to this point in time. Never mind. I'm not going to even do it. Anywho, with that said, $1,500 is a small price to pay. See, I messed up again. To get your name in social media. Don't you think? You're telling me you can't see like 5 over-the-hill actors or actresses doing this in order to get your name out there? This
Betty White.
You got to make sure you get all this.
She'll win. She will win.
Speaking of somebody that didn't win, that was a she. Kira, you bring this wonderful story to us, and we got to say this, and then we got to get out of here because after you tell this story, we're not going to want to stick around anyway. You know, we've seen kids come on Zoom calls. We've seen people use the restroom on Zoom calls. We have seen all type of embarrassing things on Zoom calls, except somebody leaving their item of pleasure and love on the shelf behind them during a Zoom hit. No, not you.
No, not me.
But Kira, who, how, and why, and please do it quickly because I'm already treading the ice that we're walking on.
I don't remember her name, but she's a woman from the BBC.
She doesn't remember her name either at this point.
It doesn't matter what her name is. All that matters is what was behind her. And Lenny, we've all been relegated to these backgrounds, right? I mean, we're all at home now. We're all having to find interesting backgrounds. A lot of us use a bookshelf. You know, I have my little sign here that says, "This is my bookshelf," because my bookshelf isn't that impressive. And all my books are in boxes, not on shelves. And so I get it. It's hard. You know, you don't have a home studio. You got to set up.
Very hard.
Can you tell her what it was?
It was a dildo. She had a dildo on her shelf behind her.
Oh,
and
wow.
I get it. You want a place on your wall that's going to look interesting because you're doing a very serious interview on BBC and you must look very serious. So you have your very serious bookshelves with your very serious books. But please, people, before you go in your very serious programming, just check to make sure that your sex toys are put away.
Yeah. She was on BBC with a BWC in the background. I hope that never happens to me. And you know what? Knock on wood. Let's hope that never happens to any of us.
Lenny, why didn't
that was amazing.
Why don't you have the picture for us this week?
There's FCC regulations. Ma'am. And look, you want to hear something embarrassing that only a dad would do, because dads are a little dense like that. So I'm like, you know what? Okay, I can obviously put a picture of that on the show. I'll put like a little graphic that says XXX so that they know it's really, really raunchy and we can't show it. So you all will laugh, I put XXX into the Google search bar thinking I'm going to get a graphic.
Oh my God.
Oh God, no. Really?
Needless to say, I didn't get a graphic of 3 letters XXX in a row. So with that,
Lenny.
I'm going to digress and let you drink. And I'm going to ask Kira, what is she doing this week other than evangelize the need to practice safe sex during Zoom calls on the BBC?
I'm definitely going to be checking all of my shelves, every shelf to make sure that everything's kosher. So whatever background I use for the next couple of weeks is
there's a joke in there about kosher and never mind. Keep going.
We can do this all day long.
I know.
I'm going to be working a lot this week to make sure that we get out word about the recall, making sure people loop back around, get those signatures that maybe they didn't sign right the first time. We're so close. We've never been this close to recalling a governor, not since 2003. So we could use all the help that we can get. Please tell everybody, share the petition, let everybody know. Every time you see something about recall Gavin Newsom, share it. You can find me on Just Listen to Yourself with Kira Davis, which is available wherever your podcasts are, and find my writing over at Red State.
Dr. Chris Metzler, he of all the degrees, 6 degrees above everybody else on this show. Can you please tell us what you're going to do this week?
We're looking at launching the 2nd season of MetzlerOnTheMic.com. So
nice.
We'll be doing the podcast in which I'll have each of you on separately, so we can gab about what's going on. So that's the plan.
And
Fun.
one of us will be a return guest. I won't say who it is, but I'm just saying. All right, Mr. Charles, what have you got going on this week?
Yeah, as always, you can read my stuff at redstate.com, libertynation.com. You can get me on Twitter at Jeff on the Right, and check out my YouTube channel, Breaking Conservatarian. I've got some awesome live streams up there. I'll be doing another one tonight, but yeah, I've been putting a lot more content on that channel, and hopefully you love it. Make sure you subscribe.
Are you going to have any of us as a guest on any of your shows, Mr. Charles, Mrs. Davis?
I don't want to go on Jeff's stupid show. I don't care about Jeff's show anyway.
You, right?
I didn't even want to be on the show, so it doesn't even matter. Jeff. You're just giving me what I want. You're just giving me what I want by not having me on the show.
This
reverse psychology is very effective. Yeah.
It is. And this is why this show is not 65 minutes long, because this is where the conversation goes after 60 minutes. So while everybody's still smiling and playing nice and acting like they really like each other, and people are safe and sound with the stuff behind them on their little boxes, I'm going to say we bid you adieu. Now, of course, we love you. We're going to be going from coast to coast, interacting with you, pushing for the best that we can with the American dream and making this country better. We're growing the Red and Black channel. Make sure you ask others to subscribe. We have some new and exciting things down the pike. So stay tuned, stay involved, stay engaged, and stay tuned in next week for another episode of Red and Black. In the meanwhile, TCNGB, as Kira likes to say, take care and God bless. Peace.